The soft glow of the gas light spilled onto the cobbled street, painting the damp stones with a warm, inviting amber. Inside the whispering pages, Ilara hummed a quiet tune, her fingers tracing the spines of well-loved novels. It was late, past the hour when most of Oakhaven's quaint shops had shuttered their windows and dimmed their lights, but Ilara found the quiet hours after sunset to be the most magical. This was when the stories truly seemed to breathe, when the scent of aged paper and leather filled the air with an almost tangible presence. Her shop was a sanctuary of forgotten tales, a cozy labyrinth of bookshelves that reached to the high pressed-tin ceiling. Every corner held a secret, every shelf a treasure. She specialized in the obscure, the out-of-print, the books that whispered their histories to those patient enough to listen. Ilara herself was a creature of quiet habits, her movements as gentle and deliberate as the turning of a page. Her chestnut hair, often escaping its loose braid, framed a face that was more expressive in thought than in speech, her hazel eyes constantly alight with an inner world of narratives. Tonight, she was reorganizing the poetry section, a task she reserved for particularly thoughtful evenings. There was something about the delicate weight of poetry, the way each word was chosen with such care, that resonated deeply with her own quiet nature. She pulled a slim volume of forgotten sonnets, its cover faded to a soft gray blue, and carefully dusted it before placing it back. A small sigh escaped her lips, a sigh not of weariness but of contentment. This was her world, her chosen haven. Yet, sometimes, a different kind of whisper found its way into her thoughts, a whisper of a story not yet written for Kargatoi. She loved the grand romances and daring adventures nestled between these pages, but her own life, while peaceful, felt a little untouched by such dramatic flourishes. She was a reader, a keeper of stories, but rarely the heroine. A sudden, sharp clicking from the street startled her. She glanced up, a faint blush rising to her cheeks, realizing she'd been caught daydreaming. It was just the old lamplighter, making his rounds, extinguishing the last remaining gaslights further down the lane. Still, the unexpected noise had broken her reverie. She decided it was time to close up. As she moved towards the front door, her gaze fell upon a peculiar sight. Tucked just beside her shop's entrance, nestled against the ancient brick wall, was a small, ornate wooden box. It wasn't there when she'd arrived this morning. It was crafted from dark, polished wood, perhaps walnut or mahogany, with delicate brass hinges and a small, intricate keyhole that hinted at secrets within. Its surface was smooth, worn in places by countless touches, telling its own silent story. Curiosity, a trait cultivated by years spent among mysteries, tugged at her. She knelt, examining it more closely. It was beautiful, clearly an antique, and far too fine to be mere rubbish. Had someone left it there by mistake? Or was it a gift? The thought made her heart give a small, bewildered thump. She rarely received unexpected gifts, let alone mysterious ones left on her doorstep. She carefully picked it up. It had a surprising weight to it, a solidity that suggested craftsmanship and quality. There was no note, no name, only the silent invitation of its presence. For a moment, she considered bringing it inside, but then a wave of caution washed over her. It wasn't hers. Someone might be looking for it. With a soft sigh, she decided to leave it for the night, hoping its owner would return. She placed it back exactly where she found it, feeling a strange connection to the silent object. It was a new mystery, a fresh page in the quiet narrative of her day. The next morning, the box was still there. And the morning after that. A week passed, marked by the rhythmic chime of her shop bell and the turning of pages, and the beautiful wooden box remained a steadfast sentinel by her door. It became a quiet, constant presence, a small enigma that settled into the periphery of her thoughts. She found herself checking on it each morning, a faint disappointment touching her when she saw it hadn't moved. One blustery Tuesday, a gust of wind caught the shop door just as she was unlocking it, sending a cascade of dried leaves swirling inside. She laughed, a light, melodious sound as she wrestled the door shut. That's when she noticed it, a small handwritten card tucked beneath the brass latch of the wooden box. Her heart gave an excited flutter. Finally, a clue. She picked up the card. It was thick, creamy parchment, and on it, in elegant, masculine script, were just 3 words. Words for the whispering pages. Ilara stared at the words, then at the box, then back at the words. Or the whispering pages. It asked for her. A gift? But from whom? And what was inside? She carefully picked up the box, the smooth wood warm against her fingertips. The mystery of it was intoxicating. She carried it inside, placing it gently on her counter, next to her antique cash register. The morning sun, streaming through the front window, caught the polished surface of the wood, making it glow. She ran her finger over the intricate keyhole, a tiny, almost invisible detail. No key was present. A puzzle, then. For the next few days, the box sat on her counter, a silent challenge. She pondered its origins, its purpose. Was it a game? A test? Was the giver waiting for her to find a key, or to simply appreciate its beauty? She considered asking around town, but the card specifically said A4 the whispering pages, not JA4 LRI. It felt personal, yet impersonal. Her customers, mostly familiar faces from Oakhaven, noticed it. Mrs. Gable, who always bought detective novels, admired its craftsmanship. A beautiful piece, Alara. Where did you find such a treasure? Alara would simply smile, a little secret playing on her lips. It found me. One crisp afternoon, as the scent of brewing tea mingled with the scent of old paper, the shop bell chimed, announcing a new arrival. Alara looked up from cataloging a first edition of children's fairy tales. Standing just inside the door was a man. He wasn't a regular. His presence felt different. He was tall, with broad shoulders that filled the doorway, and a kind of quiet strength about him. His hair was the color of rich earth, slightly tousled, and his eyes, a startling shade of blue, held a thoughtful, almost observant quality. He wore practical, worn trousers, and a thick, dark green sweater, smelling faintly of sawdust and something warm, like beeswax. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice a low, resonant rumble that sent a surprising shiver down Alara's spine. It was a voice that belonged in a story. "Good afternoon," Alara replied, her own voice feeling a little breathy in comparison. She felt a sudden, uncharacteristic shyness. He didn't immediately move further into the shop, but stood for a moment, taking in the shelves, his gaze lingering on the spines of books, as if reading their titles from across the room. Then his eyes settled on the wooden box on her counter. A faint smile touched his lips, a small knowing curve that made her wonder. He walked slowly towards the counter, his steps silent on the worn floorboards. He stopped a respectful distance away, his gaze still fixed on the box. "It looks good there," he said, his voice softer now, as if it was always meant to be. Alara's eyes widened slightly. You know about it?" He finally looked at her, and his blue eyes held a warmth that was both disarming and comforting. "I do. I made it." Alara blinked. "You made it? The craftsmanship is exquisite. I thought it was an antique." He chuckled, a deep, pleasant sound. "It's antique wood, walnut salvaged from an old dresser. I specialize in restoring and repurposing old pieces, give them new life." He gestured vaguely towards the door. "My workshop is just 2 doors down, Oakhaven Woodworks. Ronan Hayes." He extended a large, calloused hand. Alara took it, her much smaller hand feeling delicate in his firm, warm grasp. "Alara Vance, the Whispering Pages." "A beautiful name for a beautiful place," Ronan said, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand for a fleeting moment before he released it. The warmth lingered. "So, you left it for me?" Alara asked, still trying to process the revelation. "The card said for the Whispering Pages." "It did," Ronan confirmed, his gaze returning to the box. "I've been admiring your shop since I moved here a few months ago. It's got a certain soul, and I overheard you once talking to a customer about how every object has a story, just like every book." Alara felt a blush creep up her neck. She hadn't realized anyone had been listening to her quiet musings. "And I thought," Ronan continued, "that a place like this, a keeper of stories, deserved a vessel for them. A box to hold wishes, perhaps, or secrets, or just whatever you want it to hold." "A box for wishes," Alara repeated softly, a smile forming. The idea was enchanting. "But it's locked." Ronan's smile widened. "It is. That's part of the charm. The lock is old, a bit stubborn. It needs a special touch, a whisper, you might say." Alara looked at him, intrigued. A whisper. He nodded, his eyes twinkling. Yes, the key is in the shop. I carved it into a small piece of wood, disguised it. It's hidden in plain sight. I wanted you to find it when the time was right. Alara's heart thrummed with a new kind of excitement. This wasn't just a gift, it was an invitation, a gentle challenge. You hid the key? Somewhere in my shop? Among the stories, he confirmed. I figured you'd enjoy the hunt. I do, she breathed, her gaze sweeping around her beloved shop, now imbued a new layer of mystery. But why? Ronan shifted, his hands finding purchase on the edge of the counter, leaning in just slightly. His presence filled the space between them, warm and grounding. Because you're a storyteller, Alara, not just in the books you sell, but in the way you talk about them, the way you care for this place. And I thought perhaps you might like a story of your own to unfold. His words hung in the air, warm and meaningful, echoing the quiet whispers of the books around them. Alara felt a peculiar jolt, a sense of being truly seen, truly understood, in a way she rarely experienced. It was as if he'd reached into her innermost thoughts and plucked out the very yearning she had only allowed herself to acknowledge in the quietest hours. Thank you, Ronan, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It's the most wonderful gift I've ever received. He smiled, a genuine, open smile that crinkled the corners of his blue eyes. I'm glad. I'll leave you to your quest then. Don't worry, the lock isn't complicated, just particular. A gentle touch, and perhaps a hopeful thought, is all it needs. He pushed himself off the counter. I should get back to my own wood. Busy day at the shop. Of course, Alara said, trying to compose herself. It was good to finally meet you, Ronan. Likewise, Alara, he replied, already turning to leave. He paused at the door, glancing back at her, his gaze lingering on her face, then on the box. Good luck with the key. And then he was gone, the soft chime of the bell marking his departure, leaving Alara in the sudden quiet of her shop, a new kind of silence humming around her. Her heart still fluttered from their encounter, a sensation both novel and exhilarating. She stared at the box, then at the vast expanse of her bookshelves. A key, hidden among thousands of stories. It was a delightful puzzle, a romantic quest straight out of the pages of one of her treasured books. For the rest of the day, Alara found herself glancing at the box, her mind buzzing with possibilities. She waited until the last customer had left, until the gaslights cast their familiar glow and the town outside settled into its evening quiet. Then, with a cup of chamomile tea steaming beside her, she began her search. Where would Ronan hide a key? He had said among the stories. It could be anywhere. She started with the poetry section, thinking of his gentle nature, but found nothing. Then she moved to the fairy tales, hoping for a clue in the whimsical titles, but the key remained elusive. She imagined Ronan with his quiet strength and keen eyes, placing the small wooden key. He would want it to be a challenge, but not impossible. He would want her to truly look. Hours passed. The moon rose, a sliver of silver peeking through the clouds above Oakhaven. Alara found herself smiling, completely absorbed in the task. It wasn't just a search for a key. It was a search for connection, for understanding the mind of the man who had crafted this beautiful mystery for her. She thought about his hands, strong and capable, yet gentle when they held hers. She thought about his eyes, the warmth in their depths. She thought about his words, a story of your own to unfold. With a sudden spark of inspiration, she walked towards a less frequented corner of the shop, where she kept her collection of books on crafts and forgotten trades. Ronan was a craftsman after all. He repurposed, he restored. She scanned the spines, went the art of joinery, restoring antique furniture, wood carving for beginners. Her fingers brushed against a slim volume, its cover a dark forest green, with an embossed title in faded gold, Y.T. Language of Trees Inc. It wasn't a practical guide, but a book of folklore, of the hidden meanings of different woods and the stories they told. Something about it felt right. She pulled it from the shelf. It was heavy for its size, almost as if it had an extra page. Alara opened it carefully, and there, tucked between the preface and the first chapter, a small, intricately carved wooden key lay nestled. It was fashioned from a darker wood, perhaps ebony, and was so delicate, so perfectly made, that it looked like a miniature work of art. A gasp escaped her lips, a mix of triumph and wonder. She held the tiny key in her palm, its smooth surface cool against her skin. It was even more beautiful than she had imagined. With trembling fingers, she approached the box on the counter. She inserted the key into the lock, a perfect fit. With a gentle twist and a soft, almost inaudible clicking, the lock sprang open. Elara hesitated, her heart pounding a soft rhythm against her ribs. What mysteries lay within? What wishes would she wish? She slowly lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft, dark velvet, was not a secret, not a treasure, but a single, perfectly smooth, sea-polished stone. It was a soft gray, marbled with veins of white, and felt cool and comforting to the touch. It was beautiful in its simplicity. And beneath the stone, a small, folded piece of parchment. Elara carefully picked up the stone, turning it over in her fingers. It felt ancient, carrying the weight of countless tides. Then she unfolded the parchment. On it, in Ronan's elegant script, were just 2 words. Your story. Ednay. And beneath those words, a single, delicate drawing of an oak leaf. Elara looked from the note to the stone, then back at the empty box. Your story. It wasn't a treasure chest or a wishing well, but an empty canvas. A space for her to create. The sea stone, a symbol of patience, of natural beauty, of quiet strength. And the oak leaf, a symbol of Oakhaven, of resilience, of growth. A profound warmth spread through her chest. It was the most thoughtful, the most personal gift she could ever imagine. Ronan hadn't given her a story. He had given her the space and the gentle nudge to write her own. She carefully placed the sea stone back into the box, then folded the note and laid it beside it. This was not just a box for wishes. It was a box for hopes, for dreams, for the quiet unfolding of her own narrative. As she closed the lid, the soft click of the lock felt different this time. Not a sealing away, but a promise. A promise of possibility, whispered into the quiet night. Elara looked towards the front door, towards the direction of Oakhaven Woodworks, a soft smile gracing her lips. She had found the key, she had opened the box. Now, the real story was ready to begin. Elara's heart, usually a quiet, steady rhythm, now thrummed with a gentle, insistent beat. The click of the wishbox's lock had indeed not been a sealing away, but an opening. An invitation. She felt a lightness she hadn't known she'd been missing, like a breath held for too long finally released. The air in her small cottage seemed to shimmer with possibility. Next morning, she woke with the sun, a rare occurrence for her, usually one to savor the dim, cozy hours before dawn. But today, the light felt like a call, pulling her out of bed with an unfamiliar urgency. She dressed in her favorite cornflower blue dress, the color of a summer sky, and braided her auburn hair, letting a few wisps frame her face. Each movement felt deliberate, imbued with a quiet purpose. After a light breakfast of toast and honey, she found herself walking, not towards the market or the library, but towards the edge of town, where the scent of sawdust and fresh-cut timber often mingled with the earthy aroma of the woods. Oakhaven Woodworks. The name itself felt warm on her tongue, a promise of craftsmanship and connection. As she approached, the shop emerged from behind a veil of ancient oak trees, looking exactly as she remembered, yet somehow different. More inviting. It was a sturdy, honey-colored building, its timber facade weathered to a soft patina, windows gleaming with polished glass. A faint, rhythmic tapping sound, like a gentle heartbeat, drifted from within, accompanied by the sweet, resinous perfume of pine and cedar. A small sign, elegantly carved, simply read Oakhaven Woodworks. Below it, in smaller script, Finian Thorn. Finian Thorn. The name felt good to say in her mind, a solid, grounding name. She took a deep breath, the scent of wood filling her lungs, and pushed open the heavy oak door. A small bell chimed softly above her, a delicate sound that announced her arrival without jarring the quiet harmony of the space. The interior was a revelation. Sunlight streamed through the large front windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air like tiny stars, and highlighting the rich grain of the wooden pieces displayed throughout the room. Shelves lined the walls, laden with an array of treasures, intricately carved animals, smooth, tactile bowls, elegant picture frames, and small, mysterious boxes, each one a testament to skill and patience. The air was warm, imbued with the scent of wood, beeswax, and something else, a subtle, musky scent that was uniquely human, uniquely Gin. In the center of the room, behind a sturdy counter, stood a man. He was bent over a piece of wood, his brow furrowed in concentration, a fine dusting of sawdust clinging to his dark tousled hair. He wore a simple leather apron over a chambray shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. When the bell chimed, he slowly straightened, his gaze lifting to meet hers. His eyes were the color of warm hazelnut, flecked with gold, and held a depth that surprised her. A quiet intelligence, a gentle kindness. A small smile, hesitant yet genuine, touched his lips. "Good morning," he said, his voice a low, melodic rumble, like the hum of a well-oiled machine. "Can I help you?" Alara felt a blush creep up her neck, but she met his gaze, suddenly feeling entirely at ease. "Good morning," she replied, her voice steadier than she expected. I'm Alara Meadowsweet. I recently received a special order from you." She gestured vaguely. A wish box. A flicker of recognition, then a deeper smile. "Ah, the wish box," he said, pushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "Yes, I remember. A rather unique request. I'm Finian Thorn. Please call me Finn." He extended a hand across the counter. His hand was warm, calloused, and strong as it enveloped hers. The touch sent a jolt, not unpleasant, but electric, up her arm. "Alara," she repeated, feeling a lightness in her chest. "I hope it was to your liking?" he asked, withdrawing his hand, though his eyes lingered on hers for a moment longer. "It's perfect," she said, choosing her words carefully. "More than perfect, actually. It's beautiful, and the craftsmanship is exquisite." She truly meant it. Finn's smile deepened, a genuine pleasure radiating from him. "Thank you. That means a lot. I put a good deal of thought into that one." The request was intriguing. He leaned against the counter, his posture relaxed, yet attentive. "What brings you in today, Alara? Are you looking for another piece, or perhaps curious about the process?" "A bit of both, perhaps," she admitted, letting her gaze wander over the shelves. "I was curious about the person behind such a beautiful creation. And," she paused, taking a breath, "I wanted to thank you properly. It truly felt like it was made just for me." A soft warmth bloomed in Finn's eyes. "It was," he said simply, his voice low. "Every piece I make, I try to imbue it with a bit of the person it's for, or at least what I imagine of them from the request." He chuckled, a soft, pleasant sound. "For yours, I imagined someone who cherished stories, who found beauty in quiet moments, and who perhaps needed a little push towards their own unfolding narrative." Alara's breath hitched. He had seen her, truly seen her, in a way few others ever had. It was unnerving and utterly captivating. "You certainly did," she managed, her voice a little breathy. "It felt like a key." Finn tilted his head, his gaze thoughtful. "A key, you say? To what?" "To possibility," she confessed, feeling bolder now, emboldened by his understanding. "To opening up my own story. I've spent a long time watching stories unfold from the sidelines, in books, in other people's lives. And the box. It made me realize it's time to step into my own." A shared silence settled between them, comfortable and expectant. Finn's eyes held hers, a silent acknowledgement of her words, a quiet understanding that bypassed the need for further explanation. "Well then, Alara Meadowsweet," he said, his voice imbued with a gentle warmth. "It sounds like a wonderful story is indeed ready to begin." He pushed away from the counter. "Would you perhaps like to see where some of those stories begin? Where the wood finds its voice?" He gestured towards an archway at the back of the shop. "My workshop." Her heart gave another joyful thrum. "I would love to, Finn." He led her through the archway into a larger, more cavernous space. Here, the scent of wood was even stronger, mixed with the faint tang of oil and metal. Tools of every shape and size hung neatly on pegboards, glinting in the soft light from a skylight overhead. Stacks of raw timber, varying in color and grain, lined one wall, while partially finished projects sat on various workbenches. It was a place of organized chaos, a testament to focused creation. Finn moved with an easy grace through the space, his movements economical and practiced. He picked up a smooth piece of walnut, its dark grains swirling like liquid chocolate. This is where the magic happens, or at least where I try my best to coax it out. He offered the wood to her. Feel this. The weight, the texture. Each piece has its own history, its own song waiting to be sung. Elara took the walnut, her fingers tracing its cool, polished surface. It was substantial, alive in her hands. It's beautiful, she whispered. Do you hear the song then? He smiled, a genuine, open smile that crinkled the corners of his hazel eyes. Sometimes, more often, I listen. I listen to what the wood wants to become. A gentle curve, a sharp edge, a smooth hollow. It tells you, if you're patient enough to hear. He showed her his lathe, explaining how he transformed a rough block into a perfectly symmetrical bowl. He demonstrated a carving technique, his hands moving with astonishing precision and artistry, shaping a delicate leaf from a small piece of cherry wood. He spoke with a quiet passion that was infectious, his love for his craft evident in every word, every gesture. Elara found herself utterly captivated. She asked questions, genuine questions born of fascination, and he answered patiently, his explanations clear and insightful. She learned about different types of wood, their strengths and weaknesses, their unique characteristics. She learned about the tools, some ancient, some modern, all handled with respect and skill. She even learned about the importance of sharpening, because a dull tool makes for a dull outcome, in wood and in life. Time seemed to melt away in the workshop. The rhythmic tapping she had heard earlier turned out to be Finn's chisel, and he showed her the intricate inlay work he was preparing for a custom chessboard. He spoke of the challenge of matching grains, of the satisfaction of seeing a vision slowly take shape beneath his hands. It must be incredibly rewarding, Elara mused, watching him carefully sand a smooth curve. It is, he agreed, his eyes focused on his work. To create something tangible, something that will last, that will bring beauty or utility into someone's life. It's a good feeling. Especially when someone appreciates it, like you did with the wish box. He looked up then, meeting her gaze, a warmth spreading through his eyes. Thank you, Elara. Not many people truly see the craft, or the story behind it. I think, she said softly, that's because not many people put so much of their own story into what they create. He paused, his sanding block still. Perhaps, he said, a thoughtful expression on his face. Or perhaps some people just need a little nudge to look closer. They talked for what felt like hours, about wood, about books, about the quiet charm of Oakhaven. Elara found herself sharing details about her work as a librarian, her love for stories, for the way words could build worlds. Finn, in turn, spoke of his solitary life, his deep connection to the woods that surrounded his shop, his occasional forays into town for supplies or inspiration. I sometimes feel like I spend more time talking to trees than to people, he admitted with a wry smile, but there was no self-pity in his voice, just a simple statement of fact. Then I'm glad to offer a change of pace, Elara responded, a genuine smile lighting her face. Though I imagine the trees are excellent listeners. He chuckled, a rich, warm sound. They are very patient. And they have stories of their own to tell, if you know how to read the rings. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the workshop floor, Elara realized how much time had passed. She felt a pang of regret, a reluctance to leave this peaceful creative haven, and the company of the man who brought it to life. I should probably let you get back to your work, she said, though she made no move to leave. Finn straightened, wiping his hands on his apron. I've enjoyed the interruption, Elara, more than you know. It's not often I have such insightful company. His gaze held hers, a silent question in its depths. I've enjoyed it too, Finn, she replied, her voice soft. Immensely. He walked her back to the front of the shop. As they reached the door, he hesitated, then said, Elara, would you consider coming back? Perhaps not just to observe, but to share a cup of tea sometime? I often have a pot brewing in the late afternoons. Her heart fluttered. This was it, the gentle invitation, the quiet unfolding she had wished for. I would like that very much, Finn. Wonderful, he said, a genuine warmth in his eyes. How about tomorrow then? Around 4? Tomorrow at 4, she confirmed, a bright smile on her face. I'll look forward to it. As she stepped out into the crisp afternoon air, the bell chiming behind her, Alara felt a lightness in her step that had nothing to do with the lack of weight in her hands, and everything to do with the fullness in her heart. The scent of wood smoke seemed to follow her, a comforting reminder of the quiet strength and warmth she had found within the walls of Oakhaven Woodworks, and in the presence of Finian Thorne. She walked home in a daze, replaying every moment of their conversation, every shared glance, every gentle smile. Finn was everything she had imagined, and more. Kind, intelligent, deeply connected to his craft, with a quiet strength that resonated deeply within her own soul. He saw her, truly saw her, and that felt like a gift. The next day, Alara found herself humming as she went about her morning tasks. The cornflower blue dress was ironed, her hair styled with extra care. She even brewed a special blend of herbal tea to bring with her, a small gesture of reciprocity. At precisely 4 o'clock, she was back at Oakhaven Woodworks. The bell chimed, and Finn emerged from the back, his face lighting up when he saw her. He had taken off his leather apron, and his shirt was neatly pressed. "Alara," he greeted, his voice warm. Come in. I just put the kettle on." He led her to a small, cozy nook in the corner of the shop she hadn't noticed before, tucked away behind a display of handcrafted bookshelves. A small, round wooden table, clearly one of Finn's creations, stood between 2 plush armchairs, upholstered in a warm, forest green fabric. A small vase held a single, perfectly formed white rose. "This is lovely," she said, setting her basket with the tea on the table. "My little sanctuary," Finn explained, gesturing for her to sit. "Where I come to sketch ideas or simply to rest my eyes from the sawdust." He noticed her basket. "Oh, you brought tea. How thoughtful." "It's a special blend," she said, a little shyly. "Chamomile, lavender, and a touch of rosehip, good for calm and contemplation." "Perfect," he said, already reaching for the kettle. He had his own sturdy pottery teapot, and soon the fragrant steam filled the air. As he poured, their fingers brushed, sending another gentle current through Alara. They settled into the armchairs, a comfortable silence enveloping them for a moment. The soft light filtering through the windows, the scent of tea and wood, the quiet presence of Finn beside her. It all felt incredibly comforting, like coming home to a place she never knew she was looking for. "So, Alara," Finn began, swirling the tea in his mug. "Tell me more about your stories, the ones you read, the ones you wish for." And so she did. She spoke of her favorite authors, of the world she had explored through pages, of the characters who had become like old friends. She spoke of her quiet life in Oakhaven, of her love for the library, a place where every book held 1,000 potential adventures. Finn listened intently, his hazel eyes never leaving hers, occasionally interjecting with a thoughtful question or a surprising insight. He shared his own thoughts on storytelling, comparing the narrative arc of a novel to the way a piece of wood reveals its own story as it's shaped and refined. "It's all about revealing the inherent beauty, isn't it?" he mused. "Whether it's the truth of a character or the grain of a tree. Patience, precision, and a bit of heart." "Exactly," Alara agreed, feeling a deep resonance with his words. "And sometimes, finding the right key to unlock it." She smiled, thinking of her wish box. He smiled back, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Indeed. Speaking of keys, have you made any wishes yet?" Alara hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Not exactly wishes in the traditional sense. More like, and the second," he prompted gently, his gaze encouraging. "To find connection," she admitted, her voice a little softer. "To truly connect with someone who understands. Someone who sees the quiet beauty in things, like I do." She looked at him then, her heart in her eyes. Finn's expression softened, a warmth blooming in his gaze that mirrored the warmth spreading through Alara's chest. He reached across the table, his strong, calloused fingers gently covering hers. "I think," he said, his voice a low, tender murmur, "that's a wish that's already well on its way to being granted, Alara." The touch was electric, tender, and deeply reassuring. It spoke of understanding, of shared longing, of a nascent affection that felt both fragile and incredibly strong. Alara's breath caught, and she simply met his gaze, a silent promise passing between them. They continued to talk, but the conversation shifted, deepening, becoming more personal. Finn spoke of his dream to expand Oakhaven Woodworks, not necessarily in size but in scope. to teach workshops, to share his craft with others who appreciated the beauty of wood. He spoke of the solitude of his life, not as a complaint, but as a simple fact, and how he sometimes longed for a kindred spirit to share his quiet world with. Elara, in turn, confessed her long-held desire to write her own stories, to move beyond just reading them, but to create them. "I have so many ideas," she admitted, "but the courage. That's always been the hardest part." "Courage isn't about not being afraid, Elara," Finn said gently, his fingers still resting lightly on hers. "It's about doing it anyway, and I think you have more courage than you give yourself credit for. After all, you walked into my shop today, seeking out your own story." His belief in her was a potent elixir, filling her with a quiet strength she hadn't known she possessed. They sat like that for a long time, the afternoon sun painting the cozy nook in hues of gold and amber, the tea growing cool in their mugs, their hands still connected across the table. As dusk began to settle, casting long shadows from the display shelves, Elara knew she had to leave. But the thought of parting was no longer tinged with sadness, but with a warm anticipation for their next meeting. "Thank you, Finn," she said, finally withdrawing her hand, though reluctant to break the connection. "This was truly wonderful." "The pleasure was all mine, Elara," he replied, his gaze lingering on her. "And I hope it won't be our last tea." "Definitely not," she promised, a soft smile gracing her lips. "I'd love to come back. And perhaps I could bring you a book sometime. One of my favorites that I think you might enjoy." "I would like that very much," he said, his smile warm and genuine. "A book from you would be a treasure. And perhaps," he added, a mischievous glint in his eyes, "I could show you how to properly sharpen a chisel. It's a surprisingly meditative process." Elara laughed, a light, joyful sound. "I would love to learn." He walked her to the door, and as she stepped out into the twilight, the air cool and fresh, he stopped her. "Elara," he said, his voice a little lower now, a touch more serious. "That wish box, I didn't just make it. I made a wish of my own when I crafted it." She looked up at him, her heart beating a little faster. "Oh, what did you wish for, Finn?" He leaned down slightly, his gaze intense, yet incredibly tender. "I wish that whoever received it would find what they were truly looking for, and that perhaps, just perhaps, they might find it right here with me." His words hung in the air, a beautiful, vulnerable confession. Elara's breath hitched. She looked into his hazel eyes, seeing not just kindness, but a deep well of emotion, a quiet hope that mirrored her own. "I think," she whispered, "your wish might be coming true, Finn." A soft, hesitant smile touched his lips, and he reached out, gently cupping her cheek. His thumb stroked softly, sending shivers down her spine. For a moment she thought he might lean in further, but he simply held her gaze, a profound understanding passing between them. "Good night, Elara," he murmured, his voice husky. "Good night, Finn," she replied, her voice equally soft, her cheek tingling where his hand had been. She walked home beneath a sky dotted with the first stars, her heart overflowing. The wish box, now sitting on her bedside table, felt like a beacon, a silent testament to the magic that had begun to unfold. She had found more than just a key. She had found a kindred spirit, a quiet, strong man who saw her, truly saw her, and who held a matching hope in his own heart. The story wasn't just ready to begin. It was already weaving itself, thread by delicate thread, into a tapestry of shared dreams and blossoming affection. And Elara knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her soul, that this was just the very beginning of something truly beautiful. The next chapter, she mused, might just be her favorite one yet. The next chapter, she mused, might just be her favorite one yet. Elara's heart thrummed a gentle rhythm against her ribs, a counterpoint to the quiet tick of the grandfather clock in Elias's workshop. The air, thick with the scent of sawdust and beeswax, suddenly felt charged, vibrant with unspoken promises. Elias, still holding the small, intricate key, met her gaze, his blue eyes mirroring the wonder in her own. A slow, gentle smile spread across his face, crinkling the corners of his eyes, and Elara felt a warmth bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with the workshop's wood stove. This is quite something, Elara," Elias finally murmured, his voice a low rumble that sent a shiver down her spine. He extended the key, offering it back to her. A beautiful piece. Elara didn't take it immediately. It is, she agreed, her voice a little breathy. And the lock, it's perfect. She gestured vaguely towards the ornate, untouched lockbox on his workbench. It's like it was made for it. Elias chuckled softly, a sound that was both shy and deeply pleased. Perhaps it was, or perhaps sometimes things just fit. He carefully placed the key back in her palm, his fingers brushing hers, a fleeting touch that lingered like a warm ember. So, Elara of the delightful pastries and ancient keys, what do you plan to unlock with this? Elara looked down at the key, then back up at him. I don't know yet, she admitted honestly. When I found it, I just had a feeling that it needed to find its match. And now I suppose it has. She looked at the lockbox. What's inside your hidden compartment, Elias? His smile softened, becoming more introspective. Oh, just a few things. Old letters, sketches of designs I never quite finished. A small carving my grandfather made for me when I was a boy. Sentimental odds and ends, mostly. He shrugged, a hint of vulnerability in the gesture. Nothing grand. But deeply personal, Elara observed, understanding. And now, it's been waiting for this key. She felt a profound connection to the simple objects he'd described, knowing that the act of keeping them safe, locked away, spoke volumes about the quiet treasures of his heart. Maybe, she ventured, a tentative hope blossoming. We could unlock it together sometime? Elias's eyes widened slightly, then crinkled again with pleasure. I would like that very much, Elara. The afternoon sunlight began to slant through the high windows of the workshop, painting stripes of gold dust across the polished wood and tools. They talked for a while longer, not about grand plans or weighty matters, but about the small, comforting things. Elias shared a story about the stubborn grain of a particular piece of oak, and Elara recounted the surprising resilience of a sourdough starter. They found themselves laughing easily, the initial awe of their shared discovery settling into a comfortable, warm camaraderie. When it was time for Elara to leave, the setting sun cast long shadows. Thank you, Elias, she said, pausing at the threshold, the scent of wood smoke and sawdust clinging to her clothes. For everything, for seeing the key. He walked her to her car, the crisp autumn air carrying the scent of fallen leaves. Thank you, Elara, he replied, his gaze steady and warm. For finding it, and for being you. As Elara drove away, the little key nestled safely in her pocket. She couldn't stop smiling. The world seemed a little brighter, the air a little crisper, and the path ahead, though still unknown, felt imbued with a gentle promise. The days that followed wove a new, delicate pattern into Elara's life. Elias became a quiet, constant presence. He'd stop by the bakery in the late mornings, ostensibly to pick up a loaf of her artisan sourdough or a few of her spiced apple muffins, but their conversations would invariably stretch longer. He'd lean against the counter, his broad shoulders filling the space, his blue eyes following her as she moved, deftly arranging pastries or chatting with customers. He never interrupted, only listened, offering a quiet observation or a soft chuckle that always made her feel truly heard. One blustery Tuesday, a pipe burst in the bakery's old utility closet, threatening to drench her flour supply. Elara, panicking amidst a flurry of towels, called the first plumber she could find, only to be told he wouldn't be able to come for hours. Just as despair began to set in, Elias, who had been passing by on an errand, saw her distressed face through the window. He was inside in a flash, calmly assessing the situation. Looks like a simple fitting, Elara, he said, his voice a soothing balm. I have some basic tools in my truck. Let me see what I can do. Within 30 minutes, the leak was stopped, the area tidied, and Elara stood, hands on hips, staring at the perfectly dry flour sacks, a wave of immense gratitude washing over her. Elias, you saved me, she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him in an impulsive hug. He stiffened for a moment, surprised, then slowly, tentatively, wrapped his arms around her, a faint blush spreading across his cheeks. It was a fleeting embrace, but in that moment, Elara felt a profound sense of safety and care. Just glad I could help, he mumbled when they pulled apart, though his eyes held a warmth that spoke volumes. Keep an eye on it, though. Might be time to get those old pipes looked at properly. He refused payment, accepting only a warm coffee and a slice of her lemon drizzle cake, which he ate with quiet enjoyment, watching her with that same steady, admiring gaze. Elara felt her heart flutter. It wasn't just his skill, but his quiet dependability, his readiness to step in without fuss or expectation, that truly endeared him to her. Their conversations deepened, moving from the practicalities of their businesses to the dreams that stirred within them. Elara spoke of her desire to experiment with ancient grains, to create pastries that told stories of forgotten traditions. Elias, in turn, shared his vision for a grand hand-carved library, a project he had sketched out years ago but had never found the courage or the right client to bring to life. He showed her the intricate drawings, the delicate details of the wood grain, the hidden compartments he planned for secret treasures. Elara traced the lines with a reverent finger, imagining the scent of old books and polished wood. "It's magnificent, Elias," she breathed, genuinely awestruck. "A masterpiece. You have to build it." He looked at her, his expression a mix of hope and trepidation. It's a big undertaking, and expensive. I'm not sure I'm ready." "You are," she insisted, meeting his gaze. "You have the talent, the vision, and the heart. Anyone who commissions this will be lucky to have it." Her belief in him was absolute, and he seemed to absorb it, a slow smile dawning on his face. One crisp Saturday morning, Elias invited her to his workshop. "I'm making a new cutting board," he said, almost shyly. "For the bakery. A gift. I thought perhaps you'd like to see the process. Choose the wood?" Elara was delighted. Spending hours in his workshop was a sensory feast. The rhythmic hum of saws, the scent of fresh-cut pine and seasoned oak, the precise movements of his hands as he planed and sanded. She watched, fascinated, as he explained the properties of different woods, the way they reacted to tools, the stories hidden in their grain. He let her feel the smooth, cool surface of a freshly planed maple, the rough texture of unfinished walnut. She chose a rich cherry wood, admiring its warmth and subtle variations. Elias worked with a quiet intensity, his brow furrowed in concentration, his hands moving with an almost artistic grace. He taught her how to recognize a good joint, how to appreciate the luster of a perfectly sanded surface. When he finally presented her with the finished cutting board, a thick, sturdy piece of cherry, expertly oiled and polished, with a small, elegant scroll carved into one corner, Elara's eyes welled up. "Elias, it's beautiful," she whispered, tracing the scroll. "It's perfect, thank you." "For your loaves," he said, his gaze soft. "They deserve a good home." The cutting board took pride of place in her bakery, a constant reminder of his thoughtfulness and skill. It became a silent testament to their growing bond, a tangible representation of the care they were beginning to weave into each other's lives. Winter arrived with a gentle blanket of snow, transforming the small town into a postcard scene. The bakery, with its warm, inviting glow, became even more of a haven. Elias started bringing her small, carved wooden ornaments for her display, tiny snowflakes and miniature animals that delighted her customers. One evening, after the bakery had closed and the snow was falling softly outside, Elias suggested they finally open the lockbox. Elara, her heart aflutter with anticipation, retrieved the little key from the small velvet pouch she now kept it in. They sat at a small round table in the bakery's cozy corner, a flickering candle casting a warm glow on their faces. The air was filled with the lingering scent of cinnamon and coffee. Elias placed the ornate lockbox on the table between them, its dark wood gleaming softly. Elara took a deep breath, the small key feeling surprisingly heavy in her hand. She slid it into the keyhole. It fit perfectly, without a whisper of resistance. A soft click echoed in the quiet room. She looked at Elias, her eyes wide. He smiled, a gentle, encouraging look. "Go on, Elara," he murmured. With trembling fingers, she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, were indeed the treasures Elias had described. A stack of yellowed letters tied with a thin, brittle ribbon, a small, crudely carved wooden bird, its wings spread as if in flight, and a collection of meticulously detailed pencil sketches, some half-finished, others complete, depicting grand wooden structures, intricate carvings, and the ambitious library he had shown her before. Elara carefully picked up the wooden bird. "Your grandfather's?" she asked softly. Elias nodded, his gaze distant. "He taught me everything about wood, about patience, about seeing the beauty in the grain." His voice was tinged with affection and a touch of melancholy. She then unfolded one of the letters. It was from his grandmother, her elegant script a testament to a bygone era. It spoke of simple joys, of hearth and home, of the quiet strength of love. Elara felt a pang of connection to these echoes of his past, realizing how deeply rooted Elias was in his heritage, in the values of craftsmanship and enduring affection. As they looked through the sketches, Elara found herself drawn to the library designs. "These are truly magnificent, Elias," she said again, her voice full of conviction. "They're not just plans for a building. They're plans for a legacy, for a place of stories and dreams." Elias reached across the table and gently took her hand, his thumb stroking her knuckles. "Perhaps," he said, his voice low, "some dreams are meant to be shared, and some stories are just beginning." Their eyes met over the flickering candle flame, and in that shared glance, Elara felt a profound truth settle in her heart. The key wasn't just for a lockbox. It was a key to a shared future, a symbol of the profound connection they had found. Over the next few weeks, their relationship deepened further, blooming like a delicate winter rose. They spent evenings cooking together in Elara's small apartment above the bakery, the warmth of the oven a comforting presence against the chilly nights. Elias, surprisingly, was a good cook, his movements as precise in the kitchen as they were in his workshop. He taught her how to make his grandmother's hearty beef stew, and she introduced him to the subtle art of baking intricate French pastries. They talked for hours, about their childhoods, their aspirations, their quiet fears. One evening, as they sat by the crackling fire, sipping hot cocoa, Elias confessed a long-held dream: to teach woodworking to local children, to pass on the traditions that had been so lovingly passed to him. Elara listened, her heart swelling with admiration for his gentle spirit and his desire to nurture creativity in others. "That's a beautiful idea, Elias," she said, taking his hand. "You would be an incredible teacher." "It feels like such a big step," he admitted, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. "Finding a space, getting materials. I don't even know where to begin." "You begin with a single step," Elara encouraged, squeezing his hand. "Just like a seed grows into a tree, or a simple ingredient becomes a masterpiece. We can figure it out together. Maybe the old schoolhouse down the road could work. It's been empty for years." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Elias found himself smiling, a genuine, hopeful smile that reached his eyes. "You always make things seem possible, Elara," he murmured, turning to face her fully. "You have a way of seeing the best in things, and in people." He leaned closer, and Elara felt her breath catch in her throat. His eyes, warm and earnest, searched hers. "Elara," he began, his voice a soft whisper, I feel something with you that I haven't felt before. A quiet certainty, a sense of belonging." Her own heart swelled, echoing his sentiments. "Me too, Elias," she confessed, her voice barely audible. "More than I ever thought possible." His hand reached up, gently cupping her cheek, his thumb stroking her skin with a tenderness that sent shivers through her. Then slowly he leaned in, and his lips met hers. It was a soft, tentative kiss, tasting of cocoa and warmth, a silent promise whispered between two souls who had found their way home. It wasn't a kiss of fireworks, but of a deep, abiding comfort and a profound sense of rightness, a quiet understanding that settled deep within Elara's bones. The kiss deepened, becoming more assured, more full of the affection that had been building between them for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both a little breathless, Elias rested his forehead against hers. "Elara," he breathed, his voice husky. "You truly are something special." She smiled, a radiant, joyful smile. "And you, Elias," she whispered back, "are everything I never knew I was looking for." The quiet comfort of their shared evenings became a cherished ritual. They spent a New Year's Eve together, watching the snow fall from Elara's apartment window, sharing dreams for the year ahead. Elias started making small modifications around the bakery, fixing a wobbly shelf, reinforcing a counter, always with a quiet efficiency that made her feel cherished and cared for. In return, Elara would bake him his favorite pastries, leaving them on his workbench with a handwritten note, a small token of her affection. One particularly busy morning at the bakery, Elara found herself overwhelmed. A large catering order for a town event, combined with the usual morning rush, meant she was juggling multiple tasks, her nerves fraying. Just as a tray of delicate croissants threatened to burn, and the espresso machine began to sputter, Elias appeared at the door. He took in the scene with a quick, understanding glance. Without a word, he rolled up his sleeves. "What can I do?" he asked calmly. "Point me to the coffee beans." For the next hour, he was her silent, steady anchor. He refilled the coffee machine, helped package orders, even wiped down counters, moving with an unfamiliar but efficient grace. His calm presence was a balm to her frazzled nerves, and his quiet competence helped her navigate the chaos. By the time the rush subsided and the catering order was safely on its way, Ilara felt a profound sense of relief and a deeper love for the man standing beside her. "I know what I would have done without you, Elias," she said, leaning against him, her head resting on his shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her, holding her close. "You would have managed, Ilara, but I'm glad I could be here." He kissed the top of her head. "Everyone needs a little help sometimes." That evening, as they shared a simple dinner, Ilara brought up the idea of the woodworking classes again. "I've been thinking about that old schoolhouse, Elias. I spoke to Mrs. Henderson, the owner. She's willing to let you use it for a very reasonable rent, especially if it's for community enrichment." Elias looked at her, his eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. "You did all that?" "Oh, of course," she said, smiling. "It's a wonderful idea, Elias, and it's time you shared your gifts." She had already sketched out a simple business plan, complete with a proposed curriculum and a list of potential local suppliers for wood dye. He looked at the papers, then at her, a slow, overwhelmed smile spreading across his face. "Ilara," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. You truly believe in me, don't you?" "With all my heart," she replied, reaching across the table to take his hand. "Just as you believe in me. We're better when we're together, Elias. Stronger, braver." He squeezed her hand, his gaze meeting hers, full of a quiet reverence. "Then let's build this dream, Ilara," he said, his voice firm with newfound resolve. "Let's build it, together." The idea of the woodworking classes, once a distant dream, now felt tangible, within reach. And Ilara knew, with a certainty that resonated deep in her soul, that this was just another thread in the beautiful tapestry they were weaving, a testament to the strength of their shared dreams and the blossoming affection that promised a future richer and more vibrant than she had ever dared to imagine. The story wasn't just continuing, it was taking on new dimensions, each chapter unfolding with a gentle warmth and a profound, quiet joy. His hand found hers then, a familiar comfort, intertwining their fingers as they stood by the window, watching the last sliver of sunset paint the horizon. A comfortable silence settled between them, a quiet symphony of unspoken promises and shared understanding. It wasn't a silence born of awkwardness, but of a deep, resonant peace that had become the soundtrack to their blossoming connection. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, each one weaving new patterns into their shared tapestry. Ilara found her passion for forgotten stories reignited, not just in the dusty pages of old books, but in the narratives they were building together. He, in turn, became her most ardent supporter, his steady presence a constant source of encouragement as she began to outline the concept for a small, cozy bookshop cafe, a place where stories could truly come alive over a cup of tea. He didn't just listen. He offered practical advice, helped her sketch layouts, and even tasted her experimental scone recipes with genuine enthusiasm. Their evenings were filled with the simple magic of shared meals, whispered jokes, and the comforting weight of his head on her shoulder as they read aloud from a new discovery. They learned each other's quiet habits, the way he hummed when he was deep in thought, her tendency to trace patterns on the condensation of her tea mug. These small, intimate details weren't just observed. They were cherished, each one a brushstroke on the canvas of their growing love. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves danced around their feet on a walk through the park, he stopped, turning to face her. The sunlight caught the sincerity in his eyes, a familiar warmth that now held a new, breathtaking depth. "Ilara," he began, his voice soft but firm. "I've never imagined a future with such clarity until you. Every dream, every quiet aspiration feels brighter, more real, simply because you were in it." He reached into his pocket, producing a small, intricately carved wooden box. It wasn't a grand gesture, but one steeped in thoughtfulness, mirroring their own gentle, profound connection. Inside, Nestled on a bed of velvet was a delicate silver ring, its design reminiscent of interwoven threads, a subtle echo of the tapestry that I'd often spoken of. "Will you," he continued, his thumb gently caressing her cheek, "continue weaving this beautiful story with me, for all the chapters yet to come? Will you marry me, Alara?" A gasp caught in her throat, quickly followed by a shimmering tear that traced a path down her cheek, a tear of overwhelming joy. This wasn't just a proposal. It was the culmination of every shared laugh, every understanding glance, every quiet moment that had led them here. It was the promise of forever, spoken not in hurried words, but in the steady beat of two hearts finally aligning. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, 1,000 times, "yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, its coolness a comforting anchor against her skin. It wasn't just metal and stone. It was a tangible symbol of their journey, a promise of a future filled with the gentle warmth, profound joy, and boundless love that had become the very essence of their lives. As they walked hand in hand beneath the rustling canopy of autumn leaves, Ilara knew their story wasn't just continuing. It was unfolding into its most beautiful, most cherished chapter yet, a lullaby whispered by the universe, promising a lifetime of heartwarming dreams.